Hello and welcome to the Serpent Temple podcast. This is our weekly review. This week we're going to be looking at 3 albums. It's going to be Melechesh's Emissaries album from 2006, the album by Wyatt E called Exile from Beyn Neharot, released in 2017, and a recent album which is by Vokonis, released in 2021, called Odyssey. So Floyd, what did you think of Emissaries?
Well, for the record, I feel like I'm in a Melechesh album at the moment. It's pretty warm out here in London. We're in the big smoke. I mean, the first thing I want to say about Melechesh really is I've never known a band to never write a shit riff.
Yeah.
Like literally, I don't think they've ever written a shit riff. Like all their riffs are like stellar, like top notch, fucking guitar work. And I think there's a few on this album that I've just always, I'm going to get right fucking into this. What's my favourite track on the album?
I think mine's Lattice to Cimmeria.
That's a great track.
It's so good. My God.
Yeah. Sand Grain Universe.
Oh, that's so good.
It's just got such a massive sound to it. And like it just builds to like this really simple groove. And it's just so fucking like euphoric.
I fucking love that music so much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's thing about Melechesh is I'm gonna let you take the lead on the pronunciation of most of the band members' lyrical matter, because no doubt I will butcher it to fuck.
Well, I'll let you know who they are. So obviously the person that most people think of is Ashmedi, who's the vocalist and guitarist. He plays a 12-string. I didn't know that. And they've got keyboards and percussion, which I haven't written a name for. So maybe that's also Ashmedi. You've got Moloch on guitars. He also does bouzouki and some backing vocals. And then Al Hazred on the bass and vocals, also backing. And then Zool on the drums and percussion.
Yeah, that's exactly what I've got listed down. Shout out to Encyclopedia Metallum for their stellar research.
Yeah.
But it's one thing actually when I was looking on their Metallum was that I didn't know that Prescriptor McGovern from Absu drummed on a few of their earlier albums.
Didn't know that.
Yeah, good drummer. Quite problematic guy, which I'm not going to get into.
Happened?
I can't remember what the whole... I can't remember what the whole thing was with Absu, I think.
I remember hearing some stuff about like them maybe not being good towards women. Is that what you
shit.
Heard?
I don't know. I haven't done my research on Absu.
It's been a long time since I've heard even the band. So, yeah. Oh, dear me.
But no, and I feel like I'm always... my like takes on albums always seem to be similar. And like I had a similar thing when we were reviewing the Aka Cocker album. But the words that go unspoken, deeds that go undone, almost fucked that up. But the thing about this Melechesh album, I said the same thing about Aka Cocker, and I said the same thing about this album. I think this is like the best introduction album.
This is such a good introduction album because it's so catchy and groovy.
Yeah, and I feel like it's got combinations, it's got elements, it's a combination of elements from all their previous albums kind of amalgamated into one. And I think, like, I enjoy the later Melechesh albums, but I think they're a bit more sprawling.
It's a production thing as well. The production's easier to listen to, and this is like crystal clear.
Oh, super crystal clear, like exactly. Like I had that written down as well. Like I think just the guitar work is just so crisp and it just sounds so easy to listen to.
There's so many colours and it's not like there's no chaos or mud or clashing. It's all just like considering the amount of complexity that actually is there with all the instrumentation and the things going on. It's really masterfully done and the writing is like it's just amazing. This is one of my favourite death metal albums of all time. Yeah.
It's a good one because it's like I always like bands that combine different elements and subgenres within the metal sphere, and I think this is once again another great combination of kind of like death and even like death metal, black metal. It's got the whole Middle Eastern flair to it, obviously.
Yeah.
And it's funny, innit? Because it's not really until I've really been speaking to, we've been doing this, that I've kind of realised through you guys how much that Middle Eastern or just Eastern music in general has had such an impact and such an influence on Western music in general, without Western music even realising it.
Yeah, a lot of the time, yeah. It's mad. And like, you know, this is an amazing example of how fantastic Eastern music is and how easy it is to make Western music sound interesting and good. And I'm not saying that all Western music has to sound this way. But this is for me, this sounds like home. This is the music that I always wanted to listen to when I was growing up. And because, I grew up in a culture that wasn't my own. And the music I heard growing up was nothing. Like we were discussing earlier, I'd never heard Kiss from a Rose until like 3 months ago. I didn't know what that was and why people made jokes about it all the time. So yeah, like listening to this as a teenager, I was like, first off, this is for me. This is exactly for my ears. And it's just like, I don't know if it's the same for other people, but this honestly, it feels familiar and homely and it's heavy. So maybe this is how I imagine people who are like native to the West feel listening to death metal. I don't know.
Yeah, do you know what? That's an interesting point, and I think that you've kind of hit on something, because I think I'm coming at it from a different perspective, whereas like this feels homely to you. This sounds exotic.
Yeah.
To me.
Yeah.
Like this was something I hadn't heard infused into the extreme metal style before. I mean, like Orphan Lands kind of were doing it in their earlier albums as well. But I feel like Melechesh were really the ones to take like the songwriting aspect of this fusion to the next level. But yeah, like, I don't know, like death metal. I always associated death metal with two places, Sweden and the States.
Yeah.
I think they were the two prominent scenes. That's what I feel like when I listen to death metal in particular. For me, like, I suppose Black Sabbath sounded quite homely, Black Sabbath and Judas Priest. I don't know if it's always because I always knew they were British bands. So I think once you've got that information, you're always going to automatically link that music geographically to where you know that it's from. But yeah, no, like for me anyway, that's how I feel when I first got into death metal. I was like, God, this sounds so. When I listened to Entombed or Dismember, I was like, God, it sounds so European. Or like At the Gates, it just sounds so Swedish. But then all the Floridian bands, just oh my God, this is so. Even that sounds exotic to me as well.
I get that with classical music. I don't get it as much with metal.
Really?
Yeah, like I can usually tell if something sounds Russian or French or American. Like American's like more Gershwin sounding, whereas Russian is more like Tchaikovsky, Rachmaninoff, and then like French is more romantic, like fucking the Gymnopédie guy. Oh my God, what's wrong with me? Jesus fucking Christ, what's his name? I'm sure someone knows and they'll tell me.
To be fair, you sounded super knowledgeable. Anyway, so don't worry that you've forgotten one name, because you were listing off names that I was not familiar with. So.
Fair enough.
Well, I've heard of Tchaikovsky, but I've always wanted to get into classical music a bit more, because there's...
I will happily help you. It's amazing, classical music. It's so, like, honestly, metalheads will like classical music 90% of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know, that's probably why I haven't done it, because I'm so fed up of reading fucking studies titled, oh, guess what? Metalheads and classical music fans they've got more in common than any other. It's like, yeah, I know, I get it. I've been reading these articles for the last 15 years. But like, I think that's always kind of put me off kind of exploring it. But I've got a very, very base level understanding or knowledge of classical music. But I do like, it's funny because I know like film music isn't too similar, but like it's some like soundtrack music kind of has that real rousing, euphoric feeling that I kind of get when I have listened to classical music before, and then that's kind of what has inspired me to kind of try and get into it a little bit. But
I think classical and film that has this in common. Not all classical, because there is classical that's meant to. Okay, let me turn this point around. So a lot of popular music is for an individual listener.
Yeah.
And to make that individual listener consume and purchase. Whereas metal, classical music, and film music are for rooms of people. And they're for people to experience the music as an audience and have reactions to that music. And I'm not saying all pop is like this, but I think pop as a product is like that.
Yeah.
Whereas, when you're... My voice went weird. When you're writing a piece of film music, you're writing to elicit a specific emotional reaction. When you're doing that with a metal album, you have a concept, and with that concept, you want to elicit a reaction of an emotional response from your listener, and also from a room of people. So you want to have some like cool stuff you do with the drums here. There's this mad transition that when you play this to a whole room of people, everyone feels together. Everyone feels a sense of unity, or they're sharing in your aggression or sadness or emotional turmoil. Whereas I think pop is, you listen to pop in the car on the radio. I feel like pop fans don't go to pop concerts in the same way that metal fans go to metal concerts, and classical music fans go to classical music concerts and the opera. And you'd go to see someone perform a 3-hour piece of music if you're into classical music, and we'd do the same thing with Bell Witch or Color Haze or bands like that. So those genres are curated and the writing is like paramount, whereas in pop it's more an immediate 3-minute thing. Yeah.
But it's funny because like you've got like certain pop songwriters, maybe that's why they're able to have such an intense personal connection with certain people. Like my mum's favorite artist is Leonard Cohen, and I felt like his music was very personal and minimalist, and just like kind of like it felt like it was just being directed towards the one singular listener.
I think that can be very powerful, and I think that exists in metal and classical too. I think I'm talking more about commercialized pop. I'm talking about like manufactured stuff where it's just solely designed. I think that's a lot of what we think about. Well, that's what I think about. I feel like stuff from like earlier on in the century, well, the last century is probably different to how it is now.
It's funny, I never thought I'd get to the age where I wouldn't know a single fucking person on like the top 20 or like the pop music charts. But I'm literally like, if it's not like the biggest names in the world, like Ed Sheeran or Taylor Swift, I'm like, I don't know any of these motherfuckers are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, me neither. I'm the same. I know about Cardi B because of the song that she wrote, but I don't know. I mean, did she write it?
I have no idea. There's probably like 20 writers that...
20? Yeah. That's the thing, right? Yeah. It's like, it feels like it's a marketing exercise sometimes.
Yeah, I think, and that's kind of how, like, do you know what? I'm going to fucking say it. I don't like baby metal, right? And
oh my God.
Sue me, Metal Hammer.
I've literally never listened to them. So.
I have listened to them. It's basically, to me, what it sounds like is that whole, sounds like fucking anime intro music. Mm-hmm. Or sounds like
very energetic and upbeat. Yeah.
Okay. But it's cool. I've got nothing against the music itself. What I'm trying to say is, because there's that whole thing with K-pop and the music factories out there, and they literally treat it solely like a business, and they're just churning out these. And if baby metal, if that isn't the case with baby metal, then I do apologize, but I can't help but feel like they're a great representation of what is wrong with that kind of industry, factory-esque.
They do it in America, but differently, I think. They're just less obvious about it.
Yeah. But you just got to look at how fucked up every single Disney star is, and it's just evident how toxic that the whole certain aspects of the pop music and scene is.
I mean, we have like child stars in America. Like, was Taylor Swift one of those, or the Hannah Montana person? Who was that?
Oh, Hannah Montana, yeah. Well, Miley Cyrus was Hannah Montana.
Miley Cyrus. You can see my level of knowledge here about music come into the fore. But they seem like tortured individuals. Britney Spears, I think, had a similar thing. Like, they're too young, and they're not protected. They're treated like objects, basically.
Yeah. And maybe baby metal are protected. I hope they are.
I hope so, for their sake, yeah.
But I just want to give a quick... You mentioned Bell Witch. I just want to give a quick apology to Bell Witch and Bloodbath for falling asleep during their sets. Fell asleep during Bell Witch as well, and that was also after a work shift, and it was a long night. But that was more like a trance-like thing.
Yeah, I got that
than
with
it was
Colour
with
Haze.
Exhaustion at Bloodbath at Damnation. I do apologise for being asleep on the barrier.
I'm sure they're listening and weeping right now.
So going back to Melechesh, so you're talking about music eliciting an emotion. What would you say that emotion is for you?
Oh my God, for me it's very complex because of my... I don't think this is an average reaction, but for me it's just like a longing to go home, which I cannot do. Aggression, but specifically an aggression that I am... I don't know. I feel like it's an aggression... I don't want to say Middle Eastern because I just sound like a fucking terrorist, which I'm not, by the way. But there's just a level of anger there that I find familiar, maybe just because of the sound of the music. I find, it's like Thrash is angry in a way I'm not familiar with, whereas this is angry in a way I'm familiar with. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of makes sense when you look at like the history of the band, because like if I'm
Yeah.
not mistaken, they basically fled Jerusalem, right, and ended up being based in the Netherlands.
Yeah, I don't know if they fled, but they couldn't stay there any longer. They were having a lot of issues with the more religious, inhabitants of the city. And I think I've seen some stuff on social media that looks very stressful.
Yeah.
That they've had to deal with. Yeah.
And that's bound to like come out in the music, isn't it? I mean, you know, it's just a shame that certain artists can't express themselves the way they want to.
Yeah, and I think I feel that in their music. I think I feel some of that anger, that aggression that I can certainly relate to for similar reasons. And I really love that they're doing this, because this is the music that I always wanted to hear and didn't realize I needed to hear until I heard it, if that makes sense. And then hearing this kind of put me forward on my journey to doing my own kind of thing. Like, obviously I don't sound like Melechesh when I do music, when we do music. But yeah, like, it was very inspiring for me. Yeah. And it still is. And like, listening to them kind of keeps me going in a way, when there are times where I'm just like, oh, I can't be fucked. Like, why am I still doing this? Or, you know, so yeah, like, that's kind of a special reaction, emotion, kind of relationship I have with their music that I totally don't believe many other people would have.
Do you think that's because, like, you know, like we look at a band like Nile, for example, who obviously...
Yeah.
Very neutral response, I like it. But you know, like, they're, you know, that band's infamous for obviously writing about, you know, ancient Egypt and, you know, and stuff. But like, I always, whenever I've read about Melechesh, it's always people talking about how they are if not one of the most like authentic sounding bands.
100%.
Yeah.
So I discovered Melechesh when I went to see Nile, because when I was about 15, I was 17, 16? I was 17 or 18. No, I was 17. So I got into Nile because I was like, this is probably the closest thing I'll get to listen to this kind of music, is a white guy doing it. And, you know, I remember reading like, oh, he spent a year doing the lyrics, and like the actual mythological stuff was really interesting. I really liked researching, you know, all the stuff. Plus they had a song called Masturbating the War God, which is like...
That's a great song.
I've got to, you know, check these guys out. Yeah. And like in the Catacombs of Nefernkar, fucking sick. I mean, I did like their music a lot, and I probably would like it still if I hadn't had certain experiences with certain members of the band. But at the same time, it's still appropriative for me. And I'm not like, you mustn't listen to Nile. I'm just saying I find it appropriative. Okay. And this is something that will come up again in the podcast when we talk about other bands. And it's really complicated. It's a really messy topic, because I think a lot of people don't understand. Yeah. And it's very difficult to explain. And, you know, there are members of Nile that aren't white, and like, you know, George Calais is a fucking amazing drummer.
He's a great drummer.
Really nice guy. He's fucking lovely. But Carl, I have a personal, like, the interaction I had with Carl completely changed the way I view Nile. Because before I was like, oh, this guy just really likes the culture. He's really cool. But he was a fucking dickhead to me. So I'm just like, you're just kind of using, you know, this culture that partly I'm related to, and then just kind of profiting from it. And if you're going to be a dick to people who are part of that, then, you know, I don't trust what he's doing. So yeah, but Melechesh was supporting Nile, and they were way better. Yeah. So I'm really glad Melechesh exist.
Yeah. I always got that vibe from their music, you know, that they've just so, like, you know, I also, like, grew up being quite a big fan of Nile, because I thought it was something different to the, frankly, quite stale death metal scene at times. Yeah. And, but then, you know, there's such a marked difference when you hear someone that's inspired by it than someone that actually is, you know, that is from that region, or is obviously, you know, affiliated with that region. Yeah,
because it's like adjacent to, I suppose. Yeah.
I say George Calais, how you pronounce it.
I don't know.
He was in a great band. I had to look up the name of it because I couldn't remember, but he like dropped an album with a band called Sickening Horror, and it's like a really quite a strange sounding, like proggy, dissonant like death metal album.
That's
kind
cool.
of, it's a really cool album that's worth checking out, by the way. I just totally forgot that it was just a one-time album thing that he dropped, and it was really cool.
I will actually check that out because I really respect his drumming.
Yeah, he's such a sick drummer. That's one thing about Nile, is they've always had a history of just getting the sickest drummers in. Tony Lorano as well, and I think Derek Roddy drummed in Nile for a bit, but I might be mistaken on that one.
I believe, if I remember correctly, there's a bit of classical music in Nile. I think they use Holst's planets, maybe in the catacombs of Neferencar. I think there's like a bit of Holst that they use.
Cool. That's probably like the album I'm least familiar with. I bought Black Seeds of Vengeance, which was the one that had Masturbating the War God on it, I think, and that was just such a sick album, and I loved like the triple like vocal assault that they had. But anyway, that's enough about Nile. Melechesh. I love this album, and I think and it's weird to me because because it came out in 2006, right? And there's at times, and people might flay me alive for saying this, but there's at times where the guitar work reminds me of early Lamb of God. like As the Palaces Burn era Lamb of God. Like, I don't know why Lamb of God, they've become like this contentious band that a lot of people think are just
back then they were
shit.
like really big, so
yeah, but they were tapping into something that I think was kind of cool, and I think there's elements of it on this album. Like there's certain guitar riffs that it's like a neo thrash kind of style, like almost like a natural evolution from some of the shit Testament were doing, which was what set Testament apart from the other the Bay Area thrash bands at the time. And no, so just like I just love the variation on this album. There's so much layers.
Oh yes,
the production's unreal. Like I even love the is it Scribes of Kur, which is the instrumental track, which is just like totally has such an authentic soundscape to it, you know. And I think, you know, when you hear like another band, like I'm gonna throw another band under the bus here. Like say take Blood Incantation for example. They done this instrumental track on their latest album, which was just so fucking long and unnecessary in my opinion. And they were going for something that sounded vaguely Egyptian sounding. And I'm doing like the for those not
it's
watching.
Like the it's like the chopsticks of the Middle East.
Yeah, but like, you know, you listen to that and I'm just like, this is kind of like ham-fisted, but this, when Melechesh do like more instrumental passages, it just sounds totally cool.
I think part of it is that it's not forced. Like, they're not like copying. They're just like, oh god, I keep fucking touching the mic. I like, this is what I found doing music, and I talked to an ethno-archaeomusicologist about this, and he basically said that people from certain parts of the Middle East and the world, when they do music, it's automatically not automatic, it's innately going to be historically similar to music that has been in that part of the world for thousands of years. Not in like in the exact same way, but this is, you know, this is how I kind of went about doing some like ancient music shit with my own stuff. But yeah, like there are literally, when you grow up in that part of the world, that's automatically going to be a lot of the time how you just start doing music is going to sound that way. You're going to use those rhythms, those scales, and translating that to Western instruments is really interesting. And that's where you get this sound. Like I don't think, in my view, I think I listened to an interview. I don't know if they consider themselves doing fusion. I think they're just doing music to them. Yeah. That's just what happens when they write cool riffs and they play stuff. And frankly, like this is always going to be like the coolest a riff can possibly sound as if it's played this way. And I think I'm just being, you know, a fucking imperialist about my own culture here. But yeah, like I just find that really interesting, and I'm just going to unapologetically love their music. And I'm just so fucking glad it exists. I also love that how researched these lyrics are. I didn't do the thing where I just read lyrics because I think I'd just bore people. But there are some fucking awesome references to like, you know, the Sephiroths, ancient shit. I'm talking about like, you know, touching the spirits of Sephiroth, Lattice to Samaria. There's just really amazing, very small references to stuff that I find really exciting.
I noticed that, and obviously that's just one good thing about doing the podcast with someone so educated, is that I knew a lot of these things went over your head. But like I was like doing a quick Wikipedia search on a couple of the things, and obviously the first thing that comes up when you search Sephiroth is the character from Final Fantasy VII.
Naturally.
So I'm going to make an educated guess and say I don't think that song is about that particular character.
It is not.
So, and I was reading that it's to do with like there's like these spheres of life. Yeah, and it was to do with like the Kabbalah.
I talked about it when we did the Ohm review. It's the same thing. It's like that framework of like sometimes depending on the religion, it's kind of like it's started with a Jewish mysticism of this framework of spheres. Each sphere has a specific archetype. So you have Keter, which I believe means king. You've got Shekinah, which is like a home, and they have like female and male aspects, and they all translate to different parts of the body. And it's used in mysticism to denote certain things, and it's got a very ancient kind of basis. So where is it? There's a reference to the double helix scepter, which is a reference to, oh my god, my fucking brain. It's a reference to Hermes Trismegistus's, what's it called? It's like, yeah, it's related to the Caduceus. I wrote fucking academic essays on this shit. It's related to the Caduceus, which is itself, you know, in like old alchemy, which comes from the East. It's an Arab word. It's not a Western thing. Like the West got it in the medieval times from the East through like stuff that was preserved by Arab scholars. So the Caduceus is like linked to this in some like schools of mystical thought, which I find really interesting. I don't believe in this stuff in a literal sense, but I find it fascinating, and I love that this is in the music as well. It
just makes me think, you know what, like, sorry, I keep using the review of this album to take bashes at things unrelated to it, but like the fucking education system in the UK, right? In RE, you don't fucking learn any of this shit.
They don't want you to learn this shit.
They
want you to learn that Christianity is like the peak of intelligence and like, you know, it's part of like an imperialist, like empire is good thing. Of course, like, you know, the Christian Roman indoctrination of the history of the UK, you'd want that to be a good thing and not a bad thing, because otherwise you're just undermining like all the racist systems and infrastructures that are in place here.
Yeah.
Sorry, a bit of rant.
No, but it's true though, and it's just like, you know, I just feel like with any topic in the education system, it's just not designed in a way to hook anybody in or get anybody interested in it, because that's not what they want.
All we did was Christianity at school.
That's all I remember. I mean, to be fair, I bunked 95% of my RE lessons, but like each one I attended was just one of the worst. It was just really, I think we'd done a bit of Buddhism at some point. But,
they're like, oh yeah, Buddhism's really peaceful and good, and that's pretty much it. You learn about like the pillars of Islam. They're like, but low key, they're just like, Islam bad, you know. Yeah.
But it was, but nah, it's that's why I think, you know, this album is just such a fucking, and the band in general just so great, because, you know, it's just such a good representation of that part of the world.
Yeah, I think it's great. I don't know about representation, but I think it's like a fantastic example of how I think underestimated, and how there's just like there are a lot of bands in the Middle East that sound incredible, but I feel like Melechesh are probably the most recognized. I'd say maybe Orphaned Land, but I feel like Melechesh are better.
Yeah, I think Orphaned Land, I think, are more geared towards kind of presenting the more kind of diluted,
they're like
accessible.
Both sides, which is like not a thing. There's no both sides. I feel like Orphaned Land are trying to be like centrist and like, oh, we can unite everyone by not being political, whereas doesn't work that way, because everything is political.
You can't really unite someone by not being political over an issue that is inherently political,
and like an issue that literally can endanger their life, right, or like their right to exist, and at that point you are being political whether you like it or not, which is, you know, everything you do is political. Whether like you wake up and you breathe, the air you breathe is political. Like the air we're breathing right now in central London is so dirty, it's illegal, and yet we come here and we, you know, we don't willfully do it, but we have to. So we're kind of allowing this air to continue being shitty and dirty. Whereas if everyone just decided not to come into London until the air was sorted out, they'd sort the air out, right? Yeah. But I'm not saying it's our fault, it's the fucking government's fault. But I feel like, you know, you can make everything political, because it is, because politics is everything that affects people. Yeah. So, you know, just by existing, you're being affected and affected stuff.
Yeah, I think that mainly stems from the whole like apolitical argument mainly stems from people having too narrow a definition of what politics is.
Yeah, I think it's like, I don't think that word means what people think it means.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did want to mention a cool fact, which I read, not about this album in particular.
Yeah.
Is it Ashmedi? Is that how you would pronounce it?
I think it's Ashmedi. Yeah,
Okay,
I
that.
heard him say Ashmedai in an interview, and I was like, damn.
Yeah.
So maybe it's Ashmedai, because
Okay.
that's what he said.
I'll go for Ashmedai then.
Yeah.
So I was reading a cool fact on the following album from this Epigenesis. Apparently he recorded the vocals naked.
No way!
And it was recorded in Istanbul as well, which I thought was super cool.
Oh, it's fucking hot in Istanbul, so that might be why. But did he give a reason as to his nudity?
Yeah, basically it was really cool actually, because he was saying it was all about just kind of being in touch with the whole primal nature, and you can't get any more
so
primal than being
cool.
fucking
I
naked
want
as
to
you were
do
born.
that, but it would be problematic. That is so fucking cool. I will never listen to that album in the same way.
Yeah.
So
I thought it was a really cool fact, and yeah, exactly. I was thinking, I need to check out that album
I'm
again.
gonna re-listen to that, but like thinking of, I guess, Ashmedai in the new. That sounds really weird to say.
Yeah. But it's but no, it was just a super cool fact that I just that's one of the things that I enjoy about doing these weekly reviews, is I try and find shit out which I never would have bothered to find out
Right?
before.
I love this.
Yeah.
Like, even if no one listened, this would just still be really fun to do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, oh my god, that makes me so happy. I mean, one fact I pulled up for this segment of the review was that Melechesh means king of fire in Hebrew.
That's cool.
Melech means king, so Esh is fire, which makes sense. It's Atesh in Iranian, so related words, etymology. Woo! There you
Such a
go.
cool name, just Melechesh. Just
It's a good
nice
name.
to say. Yeah.
I love it. Yeah, I was always, before I learned that, I thought it might be Melechesh or something, because Chesh means eye in Iranian. But obviously they're not Iranian. But sometimes I'm like, I know the words can, be shared and travel around and meet up and merge into each other and stuff. So I was wondering if that was the case.
Well, that's like, I remember this might be complete bullshit, but I remember hearing that that Welsh was connected to some ancient language somehow. There's similarities.
Icelandic?
Might be Icelandic. Icelandic would make
It's
sense.
probably Icelandic.
Also Lithuanian and Sanskrit as well.
Yeah, I've heard. I know this is true. They're
Yeah.
like very ancient. Lithuanian's very ancient.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fascinating, like the history of languages. Like Sumerian, is it Akkadian or Sumerian? I always forget which. But it has absolutely no relatives, which is like very unusual
Yeah.
for a language. It's just its own fucking thing, which I find so fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
That's
it's
super
Akkadian.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one closing point I want to mention about the album in particular was as a vocalist, I do think that he's got some really good vocal phrasing, and I love the incorporation of like the chanting as well. I think it's super cool. I think it's just overall, I love this album, and I think it was just so cool being able to listen to it again, because I think too many times when you've listen to an album, say once or twice, or even if you spun it a lot when it was released, you tend to just kind of forget about it and never listen to it ever again. And it's just so cool to go back to something that came out, 15 years ago now. Like,
It sounds like it came out now.
exactly. Like, and that's literally what I was about to say. Like, it still sounds so like relevant and modern. And I think, the production definitely helps it sound, and helps the fact that it sounds so fucking clear and relevant.
Yeah, I mean, these are, I always say this, but they are literally one of my top 5 bands. Like, there's like, they are, I mean, the guitar work is always amazing. The tone is beautiful. The drumming is fascinating. They're using like, Eastern rhythms, which is rare. It's like, there's so much variation, as you say. The energy is just beautifully worked in this album. Like the whole way through it's maintained, which is really rare. Like often bands will kind of drop it after a few songs, and you kind of just go ugh, and you slump and you stop listening. But I'm always listening when I put these guys on, even if I'm doing something at the same time. I don't tune it out. It's just so, it's like food for my ears. Yeah. And they're amazing live as well.
Need
Very
to see
nice.
them live. God.
Oh my God. I haven't seen them live since like 2008 or something.
So what was the bill? Was Niall, Melechesh, anybody else there?
Oh my God, I don't remember. I don't think so. If there were, I'm really sorry. But I mean, people were belly dancing to Melechesh in the
Belly cash.
You know what? I'm hungry, so that's why I said belly cash, because my belly just rumbled. Belly cash. People people were belly dancing in the pit, like men and women, like legit properly belly dancing. And I think there was like some guy who was like a middle-aged guy, and he was like belly dancing really well. I kind of wish I went in there and did it too, because you just want to move when they're so groovy.
So basically what you're saying, that is like a fucking non-lame version of those people that do the Viking row.
Oh my god, yeah. I hope
because that's kind of
lame.
cool. But Viking rowing, lame. I'm not about it.
Maybe like kettlebell swings, like with a hammer, like maybe do some weights. I don't know. You know what? I love the idea of a gym.
That's good.
Also
Make pits more dangerous. Let's bring
weights.
Yeah.
Unsupervised weightlifting during concerts.
I feel like you get that at a Harm's Way gig, just like people just just deadlifting in the middle of a pit.
That'd be so fun.
That'd be sick.
I would love to do deadlifts at a fucking Harm's Way gig.
That singer is fucking jacked, by the way.
I know. I want to do deadlifts with that singer.
Yeah.
Like, I want him to shout at me to work out. That would be great.
I think I remember reading he is actually a powerlifter.
He's got a powerlifter's build.
Actually,
It does not surprise me. But he's very toned for a powerlifter.
Yeah, it's I think you just get different types of powerlifters. You get like the ones which more go for the strongman aesthetic, with more mass, and you get the ones which are they're still big, but they've got some tone to them.
Yeah, thick with like 10 C's.
But that's enough for falling over the the chest and glutes of the Harm's Way singer.
Yes. I don't know why I made that weird sound. I was just going full Middle East.
Another thing I want to say quickly was, is that, I was looking at the album cover, is that the Tower of...
Babel?
Yeah.
I know it's actually got the Sephirot on the cover. I'm stuttering now. Let me look at the cover. Melechesh, Emissaries.
It's quite a cool album cover. I think it makes a big difference when a band has a good album cover, A
huge difference.
Obviously in this day and age, in a digital day and age, it's probably maybe less important because of the way people consume music. But I don't know about you guys, but when I used to buy CDs, like if it had a shit cover of a band I didn't know, I wouldn't buy it.
I'm exactly the same. I do that with vinyl. So I was wrong. It doesn't have the Sephirot on the cover. I think that's Epigenesis that has it. This one does have the Tower of Babel. I think that's the Gustave Doré one. It's his work is like widely used in metal. I'm pretty sure Behemoth have used his work before as well. But yeah, I think I do believe that's a Tower of Babel. I think that's a three-headed lion, and then I think that could be an astrolabe underneath, which is an Arab invention used to navigate the sea using the stars.
Oh, cool.
They're beautiful. You can see them in the British Museum. Let me see if I can make out.
Is that like a bit like a sextant, or is it?
It's like a mad complex sextant. It's like way more complicated. You can navigate like using more maths. It's got loads of gears, and it's kind of like a plectrum shape. It's really big. No, usually they're round, but they've got like loads of circly gears on them. My education's shining through. But you move them around according to like lines and numbers, and use like
Gotcha.
You basically use like Pythagorean mathematics to navigate. I believe. Yeah.
Wish I had one of them to find the toilets in Harrods.
It's legit hard.
Yeah,
and I worked there, so yeah. I mean, it's a very cool album cover. I love the colors. I mean, that's the color of hot Middle East shit. That made it sound really sexual. So
that's the title of the third Lowen release, isn't it? Hot Middle Eastern.
I'm
shit.
recording it in the nude. Yeah. Yeah, it is Epigenesis with the Sephirot on the cover. That's what it looks like.
Oh yeah.
Those ball things.
It's cool album art, man. Always that's one thing that always kind of struck out to me. I like the Enki album, or Enkai.
Oh, Enki. It's from oh my god, the Enuma Elish reference in this album makes me really happy every time. It's like the Enuma Elish rewritten. It's fucking cool. I didn't realize that the Epigenesis has Persian rugs on the cover. That's really awesome. I love that. Sorry, I'm just staring at Melechesh album covers. This is so entertaining, guys. Should we move on?
I think we should move on, but yep. Final comment, Melechesh, good. I like.
10 out of 10.
No.
I want to see them live so badly. If Ashmedai sees this, please come on the podcast. We want to read your cards, and I just want to lose my shit.
You could be nude if you want as well.
I'm fine with that if Shem is, yeah. We could just do like a weird X-rated strange, platonically exploited Serpent Temple.
I mean, we might upload it to Pornhub instead of YouTube, but
hot Middle Eastern babes. Sandy card reading in progress. Yeah. So Wyatt E, interesting. I think this is two interesting bands to review next to each other, for probably very obvious reasons. If no one's heard Wyatt E before, they're a Belgian band. This album, Exile from Beyn Neharot, I believe it's instrumental. I actually zone out.
It is instrumental, yes,
yeah.
I can confirm.
Yeah, they perform wearing, like, I think the niqabs, they're called. They're just, like, fully covered Afghan style with the grills in front of the faces. So when I first heard this band, I was like, oh, amazing, more Middle Eastern people making music. And the music's got, like, Hebrew references. It sounds awesome. It's kind of like Sleep. It's like Sleep and Ohm at the same time. It's like if Matt Pike wasn't in Sleep. Is kind of how I view this band.
Yeah.
It's really like not groovy, but it's got like swing. The rhythm is like really cool. They ride the cymbals a lot to create this like awesome kind of hypnotic, meditative atmosphere. And then the guitars like can be really heavy, but they're generally like quite dreamy. But it's still got this sense of heaviness to it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's I was doing a bit of research. The only thing I could find on the words Beyn Neharot, if I'm pronouncing that right, probably not.
Beyn Neharot.
I never pronounce anything right. Is apparently it means the mouth of the river.
I didn't get that. Beyn means between. It means exile from between the rivers.
Okay.
So in Mesopotamia, it was marked as the space between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers.
Okay.
So I believe it's a reference to that. However, so I don't know if you guys know about the Babylonian captivity.
No.
So basically, it was between the periods of 587 and 6 BCE. Yeah. So during this time, basically, in the kingdom of Judah, the Jews were just fucking taken, and not all the Jews. So what they did is they got all of the clerks, all the lawyers, all the Jews that kind of ran the kingdom, and they were held captive in Babylon for hundreds of years. I think this was after the destruction of the first temple, if I remember correctly. I'm not Jewish. Please don't be angry if I get this wrong. But yeah, so basically the Jews were like held hostage. It kind of fucked up. This is like a period of extreme negativity in Jewish history. And then shout out to the Persians. Basically, Cyrus freed them and he ended the exile. However, exile from between the rivers implies that they're exiled from Babylon. So I don't know what they're trying to get at there. I'm assuming perhaps they didn't realize this, or it's a reference to something else. But this is, to me, the most obvious interpretation.
Okay, cool. Yeah, it's really cool to hear just a bit more of a detailed kind of description of what this could be referring to. Got a quote from the band saying that they write music for the gods.
Yeah, I quoted a lot of this interview because after I did that, I was like, huh? And they say, we want to make listeners travel in the music through this pilgrimage that we've created within a fantasized ancient Orient, which takes place in ancient Babylon. So I guess they've done that to like not have to be historically accurate. But I would say maybe not the best non-historically accurate Hebrew title.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know how. I'm sure a lot of people wouldn't care, but as like a lyricist, I'm like.
Yeah, I am too uneducated in that realm to have picked up on a lot of that.
I've just got a message from Shem. Apparently it's Exile to Beyn Neharot and not Exile from Beyn Neharot. I'm fucking wrong. They're actually being very accurate, and they are talking about the Babylonian captivity. I hold my hands up in shame.
That was smoothly done. That was good.
Thank you for saving my face there. I take it all back. Well done.
Talking a bit about the music. Mm-hmm. It's I really enjoyed this, by the way. I did think it was great. As I've said numerous times on this podcast before, it's the sort of thing where I do have to be in a certain mood to really appreciate it because it is quite sprawling. There's a lot of repetition. But I do think there's a lot of cool, interesting elements on this release. I really like how the music kind of climaxes and builds up.
Yeah, they're really interesting the way they control that.
Yeah. There's not too much of a reliance on guitars. It's interesting to hear.
Yeah.
You know, like they kind of got this real lethargic quality to them at times. Like
I think the rhythm, the percussion is the most important part of the music.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just the way it's all kind of melded together. I think it's just really cool. And then I've got noted down here as well. Like there's a lot of crashing sort of cymbal work and like really like bassy kind of ominous sounding.
The bass
synths.
is fantastic. Oh,
Yeah.
I love the synths.
Yeah,
synths are really cool. They're like
yeah.
ominous for sure. Yeah.
And it's funny because I mean, if you're saying the synths are cool, then they must be good.
I usually fucking hate synths, so this is extremely high praise from me.
But yeah, and it's even got some post-metal qualities at times as well. You know, like I'm a big fan of like sort of soaring, ethereal kind of guitar work. You know, and that always ticks my box.
They're really good live. I will say, I was saying, I was like, oh yay, Middle Eastern people. They're not Middle Eastern. They're just some Belgium guys. They said that they were based in Jerusalem when they started the band, and they apparently said it to have a sense of anonymity. Which reminds me of that death metal band that said they were from China.
That was I think that's the DSBM band.
Oh, my bad.
Ghost Bath.
Yeah.
Who were from somewhere in the States.
I was like, I know it's not intentional from them, but and like they do actually talk about cultural appropriation, and their words, they say cultural appropriation can be a really touchy subject. For us, this is a homage to the past. It's an honor for us to do this, and we're not trying to rip off cultures. We're trying to avoid cultural appropriation by focusing on cultures so ancient they are disconnected from modern cultures. Or perhaps look at it a different way. First off, I would not say that they're disconnected. So I'm not a fan of that justification. Nobody can complain about appropriation saying they are descendants of Babylon, because we are all descendants of Babylon. Humanity has traveled all over the globe, and I think that we were all the infants of these first civilizations. We are trying to get people inspired by this common past we all have. That's a very noble statement, but I do think that is not a good... I don't agree with it. You could use that argument to be like, I'm just going to walk around wearing a American Indian headdress because we're also descended from American Indians, and I'm also going to wear dashiki all the time because I'm also African. Like, I don't think that checks out. And in the Middle East specifically, especially in places like Iran, people use ancient history as a way of actually rebelling against the government, because they've been, after like the Islamic invasion, a lot of culture was suppressed, and part of going against that is using ancient history as a way of retaining that sense of culture in the face of some eradication. So this makes me somewhat uncomfortable. It's a touchy subject. I'm sure there are people who would disagree with me, and there are probably people who actually have a far more extreme reaction than I do. But I would say, for those reasons, don't say that about humanity being descended from Babylon. Like, that's not true. That's just categorically not true. People did not all come from the Middle East. People, I believe, came from Africa and then spread out.
Well, that's what I always heard. I mean, I've never looked into it, but I always heard that Africa was the...
not the Indus Valley, it's the Rift Valley, I believe, that they found. That's the specific place that humans originated from and started migrating from.
Was that before or after the aliens came into Egypt and gave us the technology?
I believe it was a few years before that.
Okay.
Yeah, before the lizards came.
That was a joke, by the way.
It was a joke. We do not believe in these things.
I don't think that happened, Just want to clarify.
Yeah. I mean, we like aliens, but not in that way. Yeah.
I know someone who doesn't like aliens.
We all know someone who doesn't like aliens. Bless him. So that's me on the cultural appropriation. I love the music. Really fucking wish they didn't put it forward in that way. They said a bunch of other stuff that made me wince as well, but I'm just going to give them the benefit of the doubt. I know they're not intentionally doing this. They also say when they're using Eastern instruments, they're not masters of these instruments. We are seeing them with our own culture. And I have mixed feelings about that too. So, yeah, like, feel free to just not say stuff like that about music. It just makes me uncomfortable because, like, yeah, I get it. You think you're being innocent, but, like, this culture, Western culture, is literally responsible for the Middle East being a fucking shithole right now. So, sing of your own culture, maybe, like, smash it. You know, try and extort it for money in exchange for oil. Like, you come into my house and take my instruments. I don't know. Like, I don't mean to be so personal, but, like, those are things. The music really helps. The music outside of the street really helps, like, put my point home right now. But yeah, like, that's just the angry, brown, aggressive woman being a bitch and saying what she thinks about this. So I'm sure a lot of people will find this annoying, but I'm going to say it because I'm here and it's...
Well, fair enough. At the end of the day, you know, I think you got to be true to how you feel.
Yeah.
In any aspect of life, you know, and I think, you know, fuck it, say what you feel.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be really interested to see... I mean, I doubt they'll check this out, but if they do, I'd be interested to hear what they think, how they feel. I don't mean to attack them in any way. I think the music is beautiful. They actually got signed to an Israeli label, so obviously not everyone agrees with me. And they have a really beautiful music video that's recently come out where they collaborate with an Israeli singer, I believe. So I think that's really cool. I think that element is great. I wouldn't have been so uncomfortable if they hadn't said that stuff about cultural appropriation, ironically. I think they just explain themselves really badly, and I think they just don't fully understand it, which why would they? They've not had to experience it.
Yeah. And, you know, I think, you know, doing the typical white person thing of trying to relate to it my own fucked up way is, at the end of the day, you know, we aren't privy to a lot of this shit, and I don't think we know a lot of things until it's kind of laid out in front of us.
Yeah.
And I'm not excusing anything, by the way.
Of
I'm
course.
just saying, you know, for... Like, it's when you don't have to experience something, you don't know the effects. And we've talked about this, whether it be being a certain gender, say a metal show, or just anywhere in society, you know, like there's going to be... You can't relate to the experiences of something that you are not connected to yourself.
Right. And I think that a lot of people of, like, you know, the demographic of, I guess, white male... don't understand how amazing it can be when people who aren't in that demographic see white men, I guess. I hate saying it because it sounds weird. But when a lot of people like me see people being understanding and showing that even if they don't fully get it, that they're cool with not doing things that... I'm not being like not doing things that offend me or upset me, but like understand that cultural appropriation isn't good and that it's okay not to understand it, but it's also important to like not do it, even if you don't understand it. And like that means, you know, it's a big deal for people like me. Not everyone who looks like me or is like me, but it is a big deal, and it makes a huge difference in terms of how it feels to be in a space. You know, to consume music, to go to shows, to come out and walk down the street. Like, it's just fucking exhausting to not be white and a guy, or even just a guy a lot of the time. So it's just really, it's cool. Thank you. Right on.
But it's, and you know what, like bringing it back to like the music somewhat, I think it's kind of, and that's the thing I think is cool about this release, is that it does kind of resonate with me, and I do really enjoy it.
Yeah.
But like, say for example, the previous example we were using of Nile, comparing Nile to Melechesh, right? You know, like it's the authenticity always shines through when it's coming from a genuine place or someone that has real life experience in that realm. But realm is more of a metaphorical realm, not an actual literal realm. But you know, and I think me personally, I always tend to gravitate towards something if I know that the people involved in it actually are, you know what I'm trying to say, like they actually
can feel if someone is kind of being authentic. I know there's a word that we're both trying to find.
Yeah. But I think, you know, it's like you said, it's tricky, isn't it?
Yeah. And it's the intentions, I guess, a lot of the time. And sometimes people don't maybe sometimes it's also unintentional, but the effect can be really negative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like, the whole ghost bath thing was just crazy because it was just like it wasn't even like they were writing about anything to do with Chinese culture. They just randomly came out and said, "Yeah, we're from China."
What the fuck?
I just didn't get that, but
yeah, yeah, it's really weird. It's just like, it's really cool when people can appreciate cultures, but when people start to take on and use aspects of a culture that's not their own for their own profit or to gain something, especially when their native culture has historically oppressed the other culture, that's appropriation. That's generally the definition of appropriation. So a lot of the time it's not obvious, but it is. Like, wearing feathers in your hair, American Indian stuff, headdresses. I mean, they had a fucking genocide that was covered up against them that's still fucking going.
Yeah.
So it's, and those things are holy. Burning sage is a really good example. White sage is almost extinct.
Yeah.
In America, because people buy it because they're like, oh, smudging's really cool, but like smudging doesn't mean that. Actually, you have to have good energy when you harvest the leaves, and when you're wrapping the leaves, it's got to be done in a certain way with certain kinds of thread. It's got to be dyed a certain way, and white sage is going extinct, so actual American Indians can't use it, and they use it for important things and functions in their daily life, because some boho ladies like, oh yes, my room smells of sage. You can use any other kind of sage, but it's always the white sage, apparently.
It's interesting how, so you just mentioned Native sort of Americans there, and it's interesting how people finally seem to be kind of wisening up to what happened in Canada as well.
It's so fucked up.
Because for the longest time, I never heard anybody really talk about the First Nations in Canada until maybe the last 5 years or so. I think people are slowly realizing it's just as fucked up as what happens to the Native Americans as well.
Yeah, it's horrendous. Like, if anyone, I mean, go and read about it if you don't know about it, because I watched some heartbreaking, incredibly emotional like documentaries and stuff, like interviews with people who went through the schooling system at the time, and it's just honestly worse than any horror film that you can think about. It's horrendous.
Yeah, shit is fucked. We live in a shitty world, everyone.
Fuck the world. Listen to Melechesh. Yeah.
But no, it's going back to the release quickly after that relevant tangent. Mm-hmm. The first track, which I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce.
What is it called? Let me see.
But I think it loosely translates to Protect My Eldest Son.
Oh, nice. I don't have the tracks in front of me.
Well, there is there. For,
Nebuchadnezzar.
Yeah.
Nebuchadnezzar's the king. He was the king of Babylon during the captivity. Nebuchadnezzar, I think, the second. So that's, Nebuchadnezzar the second. He was the king of Babylon in the 7th century BC. There you go.
But you kind of, that track in particular, kind of, when you were saying before about percussion being key, I think I definitely really hear it in that track. I think, there's just something cool about the way, like percussion can be used almost like a crashing wave at times, that rolling sound as well.
It's liquid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, and I just think it's not something you really get too much in metal, if I'm being honest. Like, the rhythm section is kind of normally something used just to, it's there as a function. Yeah. It's just like, the rhythm section's there just to bolster up what everybody wants to hear, which is the vocals and the guitars. But, so I think it's always cool. And I think that's one of the cool things I like about doing these reviews is we've explored a lot of releases, which I think, and it's been refreshing to hear things where like the guitar hasn't always been the forefront of the music. And when especially in the genre, or even, I wouldn't even say this is metal, to be honest, it's loosely got some links, but in the music I listen to primarily is all about the riff. And it's just refreshing to hear groups that, that work more cohesively as a unit and, present something a bit different.
I think this is like really similar to Ohm, basically.
Yeah, Ohm was super cool. Like that was like, I could definitely see how people like view Ohm's music as almost like a religious experience in itself.
100%. And the reason I like Ohm, sorry to go back to it, but he's not being like, I'm Israeli, or like everyone comes from this. He's like, no, I just think these are really cool, and he's just doing his own thing with it. Whereas I think this was like, I think maybe they were trying a bit too hard to get into the shtick of looking like they were Middle Eastern as well.
Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know. Yeah, but
Potentially.
I'm like, they used the percussion in the same way with the cymbals and stuff, I think.
Yeah, that was a great album.
It's so fucking good. It's
I
one
need
of
to
the
listen
best.
to them again.
Hell yeah. I'm
Great
so glad you
music
like
for
them.
this weather we're experiencing at the moment.
Oh my
It's
god,
quite
you're
warm.
right. We are sweating our balls off.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mine's already gone. So should we go on to Vokonis?
I reckon we shall.
Sick.
Should.
Shall
shoot.
Shall shoot. So yeah, this is Odyssey, released in 2021. The Swedish band. What did you think of them?
Okay, now this is... I'll open it with the fact that I did actually like this release much more than I was anticipating to.
Likewise.
Because as always, before I get into an album, I kind of do a bit of... If I'm not familiar with their previous material, I'll do a bit of work beforehand, listen to a few tracks. And I was thinking, okay, this might be, some relatively accessible, kind of stonerish, sludgy... just kind of contemporary metal, but I think it's presented in such a way that I actually really enjoyed it. Like,
it's really interesting, this album. It was not what I expected.
There was so many things in here that just really threw me off. I mean, like
the vocals.
The vocals were mad interesting because you've got like, it's literally like you throw. Can't remember which one is it in Mastodon that does the bellowing. It might be. Oh God!
I always mix them up.
I think it's Troy. Troy's like the kind of the bellower, isn't he? And it's like a combination of him, Klaus from Scorpions. Like at times, it literally sounds like a Scorpions chorus. There's one track in particular called "Blackened Wings," which has got like a super catchy chorus. And I was like, this reminds me of a Scorpion song. And yeah, and it's got some harsh vocals in there as well, which has completely
really
come from
good.
left field. Yeah, and it's just like, so many times when a band, is, and even the music as well, there's some really interesting and quite varied guitar work. There's a range of different tempos and dynamics and sounds, but while all still retaining a real sense of accessibility.
Yeah.
Like I wrote down this really bizarre analogy, right? Like if you're ever shitting on the toilet, right? You listen to a band like Defeated Sanity, that's perfect shitting music. Like...
I've never listened
like
to
proper
music while having a
guttural
shit.
death metal, right? Like that is, it can really help sometimes. Like, don't do it.
I love it. I'm gonna try it.
Don't do it in my own fucking house. But like, if I'm out and about and I need to do the business in public, and I'll still have my headphones in, and like brutal death metal, like Defeated Sanity. I mean, that'll get your bowels going. Let me tell you that.
I love that.
So
That's
you got
amazing.
But and this like reminds me, this isn't shitting music. This is like bus journey music.
Bus journey music.
It's I fucking listened to this again on the bus, and it was the perfect soundtrack.
It is. It's good. Like pretending you're in a music video, looking out the window.
Yeah.
The sun's out.
Or like when you see the telephone
buildings.
wires. Like I used to do this all the time when I was on the train. Like I used to. This is pre-mobile phones, where you see the telephone wires. And you pretend your hand's like a little man doing parkour, and you run it along the wires.
I've never done that.
I did that for
so fun.
6 hours. That journey up to Scotland, and
oh
it
my
was.
God, I'm gonna try doing that.
Yeah, that's what I used to do. I used to listen to music and pretend my hand was a man doing parkour, running at like 150 miles per hour.
My hand is a man.
But no, and like it's got a real. I don't know if it's just because the weather really suits it, but like this album is totally just like journey music. So you just put it on, you could chill to it. But it's got enough variation to kind of keep things really interesting. Like, there's obvious links to Opeth in this album.
There's so many amazing Opeth moments. Yeah.
But without sounding like they're plagiarizing. Yeah.
I mean, they're Swedish. Maybe that's just...
Yeah, I
maybe
think so.
Opeth runs in their blood. Maybe they all come from Opeth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, we were talking the other week about Soen, which is basically Martin Lopez's band, right? And like I couldn't really get into them too much because they sounded at times a bit too much like a derivative of Opeth. But like this, like has got those elements in it. Like there's some organ usage at some points.
Yeah, like use Mellotron. I love that. Yeah.
But I don't know, they do it in a way that it's much of the similar vein as Opeth, where it sounds quite contemporary still.
It sounds like it belongs in the song. It doesn't sound like they're like copying. They're not shouting out anyone.
Yeah.
It's just like it's there and it's part of it, and it's part of this like whole fabric that they've woven. It's like to me this album is like gold yellow music. Like the cover is amazing.
Yeah.
The cover is by an artist called Kira Kira Björling. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. It's beautiful. It's like this huge rooster, and it's got this curling tail, and there's like this kind of tunnel of light and yellows and golds and oranges, and like the music sounds exactly like that. It's just it's at times heavy, at times light, but there's always this sense of brightness, of like sunlight just like fucking pummeling you into the ground, of how like beautiful and clear it is. It's like happy. Yeah, no, 100%, 100%. Like at times, like not in style, but in the atmosphere, it reminds me of later Pole Bearer. Oh, that's interesting.
Because, like, I mean, Pole Bearer's earlier albums were far more, like, morose and quite depressing, to be honest. But, like, their album, Heartless, I think the album's called Heartless. Just off the top of my head, I'm not cheating and using Encyclopedia Metallum here. Like, that had much more of, like, a summery, like, kind of, like, you know, just more of a mellow chill and still emotional, but more euphoric emotion as opposed to melancholic. And that's kind of, I got a similar vibe on certain parts in this album, you know, like, it's so bright and colourful.
Yeah, this album kept surprising me because at the beginning I was like, oh, okay, this sounds very like Baroness-y. It's very like bright, marching, like choral, anthemic. And then there's times where it sounds really like Elder, like Reflections of a Floating World, Elder. Yeah. Really like the Elder that's like really advanced. Like I prefer New Elder to old. I love Old Elder, but New Elder's better. And this is like the best of New Elder, and Opeth and Mastodon as well.
Yeah, so much of a Mastodon vibe on certain parts of this album. You know, and dare I say it, sometimes at certain moments it sounds like they were doing Mastodon better than Mastodon themselves.
It sounds like early Mastodon, which is the best Mastodon. Yeah. And like they're doing it with these are also my favorite bands. I love Elder, Baroness, Mastodon, Opeth. They're doing all of those bands, and they're doing it really well. But I went in thinking, oh, it's going to be kind of like Stoned Jesus, or it's going to be, you know, it's going to be like your standard stonery album. Yeah. And I was really surprised. I think this is hopefully going to age really well. I think these guys have they've done a really advanced, like, I feel this is the first step of their next step, if that makes sense.
And the thing is as well, like, I don't know about you, but let me just drag them up quickly because they're quite mad prolific. Like, I think this is their...
I haven't listened to the rest of their stuff. I actually had them on Facebook, one of the members, I think Olsen, and he just seems like a really lovely person.
Okay, well, yeah, one album in 2016, another one they released, the Sunken Gin.
Ooh.
Cool, that's a cool album. Time in 2017. I have to go back and check out the other
like
album.
Tavern.
Grasping Time in 2019.
Okay,
so
it's
lot pretty...
of streams. Oh my god.
Okay, so it's like the standard sort of 2 years. Oh, do you know what it is? They've released a lot of singles, which makes their thing look more prolific than it does. But I mean, they've released, like, you know, since 2016. This is their fourth album.
Because they had like 7K likes on Facebook, but the amount of streams, they have like 300,000 streams on Old One. 600,000 on Grasping Time. That's madness.
But like, this is like, I don't know how anybody who likes heavy music, like metal in particular, could not like this album.
This is a really solid album.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, it's maybe it's not breaking too much new ground per se, but I think they do a really good job of presenting like a lot of different styles of metal into one cohesive like piece.
Yeah, definitely. And like it's their own like take on it. Like you said, they're not being derivative. The whole thing is just it feels like summer. It's just like the embodiment. I feel like I've just been like injected with like light and I'm gonna explode. And I'm just like, oh my god, like there's fucking stuff shooting out my eyes, like Mastodon, Leviathan riffs, and then Michael Ackerfeld is like whispering into my ear, it's gonna be okay.
With his hat, it's that hat he wears. What would you call that? Not a bowler hat. It's more like a. It's like an Undertaker style hat.
I don't know. I don't know enough about hats.
But I don't know even about hats. I should know about hats because my head gets burnt all the fucking time.
I know about pork pies, which look awful. They literally just look like fucking pork pies. You've got the classic fedora. You've got Stetsons. Don't know what they look like, though.
I think Stetson is more closer to what he wears, potentially. Stetson, the cowboy one. Oh,
I really like the Holy Mountain hat. You haven't seen Holy Mountain, have you?
No.
Oh, bless you.
No.
One day we will do a reaction episode where we just play Holy Mountain. You're just like, what the fuck? Why is the midget in the cow carcass? What's going on?
But I'm actually trying to purchase a hat. I really want a Brujeria snapback.
Oh, cool.
Just because I fucking love Brujeria. I think they're so corny, but I think they're really cool and stupid in a good way.
I'm honestly sad I can't wear those because of my hair. It
Yeah.
just doesn't. It's just not a thing I can do.
Yeah.
I like the ones with the big shiny stickers.
Yeah, well, I was in Southend on the weekend, and it was super warm that
Must
day,
have been beating
and I
down
was just
on
like,
you.
I need to buy a hat because otherwise my head's gonna get absolutely roasted.
Aw.
And ended up going into Primark and buying this hat that I think in retrospect it might have been a child's hat because I had to have it on the biggest setting just to get it somewhat over my head, and it was so it was just if you saw a guy wearing a Bell Witch hoodie and a hat with some weird super bright sticker on the front, that was me.
Oh, bless you. I love hats. I think they're cool. It's really hard for me to find hats that look good and fit. 'Cause I've got a tiny head and a very small face, but fucking massive hair. So
Yeah.
it just looks weird.
See, I thought I've got quite a small head. But when I bought that hat, I was thinking, shit, maybe my head's bigger than I thought it was. But the fact that I was still able to buy a child's hat and it still fit on my head shows that I do actually, in fact, have a small head.
I have a very my ears are fucking tiny. Like they're honestly like Shem only noticed them the other day. They're like really
They're
small.
quite small, yeah.
I have just a small skull, like a mouse, hidden underneath layers of brush. Anyway, enough of that. So yeah, Vokonis. I think these guys. I think they're going to probably get even bigger than they're doing. They're going to do really well. I can't wait to see what shows they're going to play if they're going to come over here. Maybe in like 2 years or something.
Yeah, I mean, like when everything comes back, and fingers crossed that it's sooner rather than later, as long as it's safe. I think I would love to see this group live because I think this would be such a fucking vibe at a festival in the summer.
They'd be so good at Dinner Jam.
Yeah.
And they'd be great at Hellfest if they're not already playing. I'm sure they are. Yeah.
Probably. I mean, Hellfest books just every band. Every band plays Hellfest.
Every band that's good. I want to
yeah.
play Hellfest, and we're a band. Book us. Book us both.
Oh, how gutted was it missing that lineup, though? That was such a good... I don't know if it's still rolled over,
I was
right?
so
Technically.
excited. Honestly, the most excited I've been about Hellfest in years. It was the perfect lineup for me.
Yeah, it was amazing. Like, even like the main stage bands where you had System, and it was just like...
I've always wanted to see them live. So they're one of they're my gateway band. So upset. I'm really upset about that. I bloody hope they do roll it over. I mean, they're state funded, so I know they're not going to go bust.
Yeah, which is good. And that's
Amazing.
silver lining at least.
Imagine if we had that here.
Also, what's the Magnus Lindberg? Is that the guy from
Cult of Luna?
Yeah, he mastered this album as well.
Yeah.
So,
awesome.
and I think,
Album mastering twins.
and I think, like it sounds great as well. I think the album just sounds really, really good. Like, I love the production and everything gets a chance to shine. There's a few moments where I think the bass comes through quite well as well.
Yeah.
Obviously, I think the vocals are quite a focal point on this album, just with how varied they are, and some of the choruses are really catchy. Like I was saying, the track
It's anthemic as hell. This
Black
album.
and Wings, yeah, and it's just super I mean, because just to give a bit of context, we were going to do a double episode.
Yeah.
So but we were too tired. So we'd listened to these albums probably a good 3 weeks ago now.
It's 3 or 4 weeks. It's actually a while back, yeah.
Because we'd been mad busy with like moving and other
It was like
shit.
the week this album came out, we were like, yeah, we're going to be so like on the pulse.
Yeah.
Yeah, we weren't on the pulse.
But it was interesting because obviously it's been a bit of time since I've revisited it, and sort of second time around I just kind of enjoyed it a lot more.
It was a lot better the second time, but I was not expecting that because it was already really good.
Yeah, because like first time I was like impressed, and I was just like, but I was almost a little bit taken aback by how kind of like
it was surprising.
Yeah, there's so much going on because it kind of came out of left field. I was a bit blindsided by it.
When the growled vocals came out, I was like, "What's going on? Like, am I listening to the right album?"
Yeah.
And then the Mellotron, there's bits with the effects that are really cool because a lot of the time I feel like people get kind of obsessed with effects and pedals and things. They're like, "Oh, it's just a thing. It's like a kind of part of the culture of this kind of music, and it's fun and it's great." But they actually use them really well.
Yeah.
Like there's some really interesting use of effects in this album, and synths, of course, and Mellotron, and maybe not synths, Mellotron. The organ's just fucking beautiful. Yeah.
Just such a good instrument, isn't it? Just always sounds so fucking sick.
I mean, Atomic Rooster pioneered that. Well, they didn't pioneer it, but for me, they pioneered it.
Yeah.
In terms of my taste, they pioneered it, I guess. Yeah.
I think one of the things I want to say about this album is what's interesting is the last 2 tracks tend to be a bit longer. I think the last track, Hollow Waters, is about 12 minutes long. So it's like, And I think it's always a sign of how good songwriters, a band or a group are by how they can still kind of maintain your attention. Because I didn't realize it was 13 minutes until, like, if we're comparing it to Wyatt E, like, you know, like, I don't mean this as a diss, but like it felt as long as it was, like, you know, in the sense that, you know, but what I'm trying to say is it was a journey and time didn't pass too quickly while listening to those tracks. But that's because I was quite immersed in it. Oh, God. Have you got a shovel so I can dig myself out of this hole? But no, I think it's because that kind of lens. So I'm gonna attempt this. I'm gonna attempt to get out of this. Fuck it. I'm going all in. So basically, like, because this music is more accessible, this album, like, and it's almost like because it's I've lost it. I give up. I give up. Yeah, I gave it a shot.
You did a good job. Yeah.
Nah, fuck it. There's no point trying to salvage that one.
I think we'll leave that. That was an amazing use of words. I liked it a lot. Yeah, I mean, this album's fucking great. And if the guys are watching, you did an incredible job. Congratulations. It's a beautiful album. It's got beautiful artwork. I think it's going to take them really far.
I think so. And I think, you know, and I enjoyed all 3 releases this week.
Me too.
It was a good solid week. And to be fair, we only really review music we enjoy, because I don't
why review something you're just going to take the piss out of, really?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, you know, it's like I don't see the point in being overly negative about something that I personally don't like. I mean, what is there to gain from doing that, you know? Yeah. So,
I mean, I may have said some negative stuff this week, but I wouldn't have put it in unless I liked it. Yeah. You know, like, it's just music, art is like that. It's not black and white. Yeah. Yeah.
It's true. It's a big grey world out there.
Big old grey world. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Should we leave it there? Do you want to leave it
I think so. I think that wraps it up quite nicely.
Hell yeah. Thank you so much for watching. Feel free to like and subscribe if you disagree or agree. Let us know. Feel free to suggest any bands for us to review, and we will get on that shit. Thank you for watching and listening.
Until next time.
Yeah.